Harry and Meghan torched what little was left of their relationship with the royal family and what little was left, frankly, of their own reputation.
There is a no-holds-barred, warts-and-all tell-all story waiting to be shared with the world.
It's a Shakespearean example of how hereditary privilege magnifies both honour and disgrace.
They should just do what I've said for a few years now. Just take the titles away. Let them get on with being Meghan and Harry celebrities.
This is full disgrace and pretty much unprecedented as far as we can see.
You seem to have a lack of empathy for Harry here, and you're
I do, yeah.
You're saying that he's
I've got zero empathy.
You're saying he's trashing the royal family.
Yeah.
This year's Royal Christmas Day reveals the shock challenges facing the British royal family, where there are feuds on both sides of the Atlantic, and it really does start to feel like things have collapsed somewhat in the 2 years since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And what makes this situation genuinely extraordinary is how there were chances for 2 reunions this year with opportunities if Harry and Meghan had actually shown some form of contrition and admitted that they were in the wrong, where there was an opportunity for the relationship with Charles to at least get back on some type of positive grounding. What makes this Christmas particularly significant is how, from a macro point of view, it is very sad to see the disintegration of the unity which Queen Elizabeth II and to a strong extent Prince Philip were always able to endear from their relatives. Why, over this last year, the family came together in 2022, when she first died, and obviously King Charles's coronation in 2023. But since then, there has been this sort of fracturing occurring as people are moving to protect themselves and manage themselves, while the institution overall has lacked the strong leader and direction. How there has been so much briefing and counter-briefing about what is really going on between King Charles and Prince Harry. But as we get to Christmas, it is very fair to say that the way that Harry is trying to present things to the world is not accurate. And the reason there will be no big reunion on Christmas Day virtually with no happy phone call, where there still remains serious tensions in part because Charles has not forgotten. And certainly Charles's team and Camilla have not forgotten how Harry and Meghan used that brief reunion earlier this year to push a PR narrative. Once you understand why you have Harry, who definitely 100% wants back into the British royal family fold, while you have Meghan, who doesn't want reconciliation unless she can protect her own interests, meaning the title and maybe perhaps the title of her children, which is really the only thing she cares about in this particular scenario. How these could be the last years of Charles's life, with his cancer remaining incurable, where he is certainly not in remission, with continued treatment into 2026. And what it means that any time Charles tries to kind of bridge this divide, Harry and Meghan sort of destroy it for him, making it almost impossible for him to have a public relationship with Harry, unless he basically causes tensions with William. Because William is sure, saying we have to have some firm separation here between what is royal and what is Harry and Meghan. You'll realise Harry claims that he wants to come back to the UK for the benefit of his family. But the reality is, and what Charles needs to make really clear to Harry, is that the future with the royal family as a working royal, or even a peripheral member, is just non-existent, where Harry is still constantly trying to relive basically his royal role by doing these cosplay royal duties, which is the only way you can really explain it. This year's Royal Christmas Day reveals the shock challenges facing the British royal family. There are feuds on both sides of the Atlantic, and it really does start to feel like things have collapsed somewhat in the 2 years since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. From a macro point of view, it is very sad to see the disintegration of the unity which Queen Elizabeth II and to a strong extent Prince Philip were always able to inspire from their relatives. Over this last year, the family came together in 2022 when she first died, and obviously for King Charles's coronation in 2023. But since then, there has been this sort of fracturing occurring. People are moving to protect themselves and manage themselves, and as the institution overall has lacked the strong leader and direction, there's definitely a royal family that would be described as more in crisis than expected. It's quite sad. There's hoping to see unity and hoping to see a strong royal family, but that's just not necessarily there right now. Let's start with the drama between Montecito and Windsor, because there has been so much briefing and counter-briefing about what is really going on between King Charles and Prince Harry. But as we get to Christmas, it is very fair to say that the way that Harry is trying to present things to the world is not accurate. There will be no big reunion on Christmas Day virtually. There's not going to be a happy phone call. There still remains serious tensions, in part because Charles has not forgotten, and certainly Charles's team and Camilla have not forgotten, how Harry and Meghan used that brief reunion earlier this year to push a PR narrative. There's so much here in this particular situation because you have Harry, who definitely 100% wants back into the British royal family fold. Then you have Meghan, who doesn't want reconciliation unless she can protect her own interests, meaning the title and maybe perhaps the title of her children. That's really the only thing she cares about in this particular scenario. It's heartbreaking for Charles because we don't know obviously how serious his cancer is. There was an update announcement not too long ago, but these could be the last years of his life and he wants a relationship with his son. And anytime he tries to kind of bridge this divide, Harry and Meghan sort of destroy it for him and make it almost impossible for him to have a public relationship with Harry. This causes tensions with William because William is sure, saying we have to have some firm separation here between what is royal and what is Harry and Meghan. Charles, in an effort to re-establish this relationship, is causing greater tensions in the family because a lot of people don't want him to. It's a very toxic, very divided circumstance. And when it comes to Harry and Meghan, they will utilize any opportunity with the royals to exploit it for their own benefits. No matter if it damages Charles, William, Catherine, whoever, they'll do it. Isn't Charles right to actually put his foot down for once and just say, actually, things are better than they looked? Certainly earlier this year when Harry was talking about how the next year is going to be all about my dad. It was on this tacit understanding that this could be Charles's last Christmas. His cancer remains incurable. He is certainly not in remission. There will be continued treatment into 2026. But at the same time, his prognosis is slightly better than probably what Harry was expecting. So as a result, it's almost quite crude, but Harry is using that to almost get more and to bargain with Charles and the British royal family more. Certainly that is behind the extra push for security, for example. Harry claims that he wants to come back to the UK for the benefit of his family. But the reality is, and what Charles needs to make really clear to Harry, is that the future with the royal family as a working royal or even a peripheral member is just non-existent. Harry needs to have private jobs. Harry is still constantly trying to relive basically his royal role by doing these cosplay royal duties. That's the only way you can really explain it. And if Charles lets this go on too long, he does risk Harry basically bringing the entire institution down. Charles really has to figure out what is the most important, the institution or his relationship with his son. The relationship with his son is important, and Harry is using a lot of these opportunities to try to wiggle his way back in. But how is he going to do that? Charles needs to know and understand that if Harry is only doing this all contingent on keeping his title and getting to do his cosplay royal routine, that only damages the institution and shows that his relationship with his father is not based on actually having personal interactions with his father. It's all about protecting himself and his own business interests and his own bank account. Isn't it shocking when you look at this from a macro level? There were chances for 2 reunions this year. There were opportunities if Harry and Meghan had actually shown some form of contrition, admitted that they were in the wrong. There was an opportunity for the relationship with Charles to at least get back on some type of positive grounding. Likewise, Thomas Markle, but they can't do it. They have a fundamental inability to ever admit they are wrong about anything. And it's so damaging to themselves. Harry, in recent interviews, basically has no regrets for what he's done over the last several years. And because he has no regrets, he hasn't learned anything. Part of the problem with Charles attempting to re-establish a relationship with Harry is that Harry has done wrong by his family. He's written a book. He's done a streaming series. He said horrible things about them publicly many times for international consumption and turned their lives into punchlines. There needs to be consequences for that. Charles needs to not establish a relationship with Harry fully until Harry apologizes to him. If he doesn't do that, Harry is going to walk all over Charles. Harry and Meghan see no value in their other family members, except for how it can enrich themselves. If you allow Harry in without him acknowledging fault, he'll just make the same mistakes again. He'll drag you through the mud again. Charles will have to just deal with the reality that his son is sort of gone at this point. There's not going to be a relationship. There were several opportunities for reunion, for reconciliation, but the royals can't do it unless Harry and Meghan admit some sort of fault. Unless they admit the things they've done wrong, they're still trapped in their victim narrative. Meghan turns every situation into a victim narrative for herself. The royal family can't allow Harry to do that. They have to be strong here. Otherwise, they'll be steamrolled by Harry and Meghan and their PR efforts. That is what William has always advocated for. What does seem very clear this Christmas is increasingly the Prince of Wales is operating a separate court. He has so much more power. He's doing things his way. The modernization effort has almost begun with or without Charles's approval. That certainly seems behind this decision not to be at the Christmas lunch. William has made clear that when he takes over the throne, lots of these royal traditions that were very important to Queen Elizabeth II, and Charles has tried to continue them to honor his mother's memory, will be out the window. They are in some ways quite old-fashioned and very much focus on that idea of what your titles allow you to get, where you stand in the royal pecking order. For example, the presents are given out in order of royal ranking. The table settings, you find your place based on what time you arrive. The more senior members of the royal family are closer to where that dinner is held, so they get to their seats first. For William, those things are just relics of the past, and he doesn't necessarily have that same sentimentality about changes. It's really interesting to consider what the future reign looks like for William, because he said in an interview earlier this year that he's not that interested in history. And in some ways, it doesn't seem like he's that interested in tradition, because history and tradition often go hand in hand. There's definitely a way to modernize things while utilizing the old framework. But there's almost worry that William is almost going to do an overcorrection. He's going to overreact and overcorrect to such an extent that he's really going to whittle down what the monarchy is. Some aspects of it are a little silly. Some of it is a little stringent and binding, but that's what makes the monarchy the monarchy. You cannot take away the order of the line of succession without ultimately disrupting the entire system in the first place. The challenge for William is it's unclear exactly where he'll fall on that line. There could definitely be a really large overcorrection from William, which is why he's trying to already figure out maybe how that works behind the scenes, setting up in some ways a shadow royal court. Then we look at the wider family. From a perspective of this very small group of people who are dwindling in numbers, how much of a blow is it for the likes of Princess Anne and Prince Edward not to have their brother now? Simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his ex-wife Fergie, and potentially the two daughters Beatrice and Eugenie, and their husbands and children with them for Christmas Day? Whatever you think of Andrew, he has been a fixture. He has been there. It's one of the more brutal decisions that was forced on King Charles, cutting his own brother from a private Christmas celebration. Because of the botched handling of the Andrew affair over years and years from a PR perspective, it had to be made. Andrew's situation is so challenging because this is a problem that should have been handled years and years ago. They should have figured out either how to manage it, how to mitigate it, but it was one of those sort of holdovers from the reign of Queen Elizabeth that they weren't trying to deal with. This is a profound lesson for the royal family to learn. Sometimes things don't go away, and you need to figure out how to address it rather than having an ostrich head in the sand mentality. When it comes to Christmas, there is sympathy for Andrew, because this is a private occasion. The royal family let it get to this level where you do have to say, no, you can't come to church service because your reputation is so bad. It's something that could have been managed so much better. The girls had to decide, do they spend Christmas with their parents or with the rest of their family? Isn't it interesting that in all of this, William wants his children, and remember, one of those 3 children is at some point going to be king, to not experience the old-fashioned royal Christmas at Sandringham, but the much more modern, more traditional, more loving Christmas with the Middleton family. It strikes as something quite significant, given that Harry and Meghan's children have never even experienced an English Christmas either. This is certainly the changing of the royal guard, for good or ill. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.